And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right. I said welcome back because I know you were just listening to our stuff, folks, and you came back because you loved it so much you wanted some more. Folks, that was a brilliant decision because we have a lot more for you. Now, why do we have so much more for you? Because this is the podcast that's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. And our guest today is, wait for it, a podcaster, amongst other things. See, you're brilliant. I told you, folks. All right. Folks, this is the place where we all come together to raise each other up, and this is the place where the rising tide raises all ships. So let's get sailing and bring in our guest today. This incredible guy, he is a holistic health and wellness advocate. He is what's called an NTP. All right. And that is a nutritional therapy practitioner. We're going to hear more about that. This gentleman is also an author of the book Stress Response: Manage Your Response to Stress in Order to Reduce Anxiety, Avoid Burnout, and Find Calm and Steady Focus. Boy, that sounds awesome, doesn't it? I wish I could find something even remotely like that. Maybe I'll learn something today. And folks, finally, he is the host of the hit podcast, What's Worthwhile? Healthy Living, Motivation, and Discussion. 130 episodes in. This guy's killing it. Please welcome to the show, Ramsey Zimmerman. Ramsey, how you doing, brother?
I am doing great. Thank you so much, Rory. Appreciate it. Good to meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you too. Thanks for coming on the show. There's a ton that we just unpacked just in the intro. Let me just kind of throw it to you to get us started. Who is Ramsey Zimmerman? What are you about? And maybe how did you get started? What's your story? What got you into this business in the first place?
Yes, absolutely. Well, like we said today, I am a podcaster and author and nutritional therapy practitioner, but all of that is fairly recent, actually. Ahead of that, I had a nearly 30-year career in sustainability. So things like energy efficiency, green building, renewable energy. And just really believe in that whole movement and that whole area. Have always been really mission driven in my life and in my profession. Uh, but over time, a couple things happened. One, we had a lot of success in promoting the kinds of practices that we were doing. And so that was terrific. And I saw a lot of the things that we were ahead of the curve on being adopted into the mainstream. And that felt like, mission accomplished in many ways. And I also, but then felt kind of like the industry didn't necessarily need me anymore. And I also began to look around and think about what else might be important, what I should do next. Meanwhile, 2020 rolls around, and that I think was a very profound and difficult time and experience for everyone in the COVID era. For different reasons, everyone experienced that differently. Tragedy did not come home to me really personally, and I'm very, very thankful for that. But just witnessing the, level of impact that that had on communities and people, and especially the fact that those who were most impacted by COVID had three or four other health issues. I had no idea that, so many people had three and four health issues. They called them comorbidities, things like being overweight and having high blood pressure, or type 2 diabetes, or being prone to secondary infections, all those kinds of things. um, in my middle age, I definitely was a bit round around the middle and definitely eating too much fried food, so I can't claim to not be in that camp to some extent. But just seeing how big of an impact that COVID had, especially for that reason on our population, really got me start thinking about health. And it was health for myself and health for communities at large and for our country. And then by the time uh, I jumped around a bit in my career. I was taking different jobs and things like that. And I felt like each time I made a career move, it was like less and less at the core and central to what I could be of use as, and where I could really make an impact. And when I finally did get laid off in, I don't know, early 2024, and within a short period of time, I was like, man, this is the best thing that's happened to me in a long time, because now I've been relieved of all my professional responsibility. And I get to decide what I'm going to do next. And the only thing that I knew, the only thing I was excited about was starting a new podcast. Um, I had done some podcasting in a previous position,
Hmm.
so I sort of knew what it was all about. But this time I just asked myself the question, what's worthwhile? What should I do? What should we do? What should people be thinking about? What's important? What are the priorities? And, it always struck me that things have gotten more and more difficult to just understand what's true and what's real and what's important. There's competing so many things competing for our time and attention, and we don't even know if those things are real or not. We don't even know if they're coming from real people anymore on the internet. And so I just gave myself some time to explore that question and was able to begin, doing that in a very public way, which was actually really scary. Really scary for me because I tend to be a quiet person. And I was definitely hiding up until that point. But started the podcast and went off on this new journey and haven't looked back since.
Wow. Okay. I mean, that's unpacking a lot. Let me back up to the renewable energy for a minute, just because I'm curious about the renewable energy. Was there a particular type of renewable energy you worked with in that, like wind, solar, or something, or was it just all sources and some sort of, um, uh, larger, big picture type of thing that you were working on?
Yeah, no, that's significant and important. Mostly in the residential space, so things that people can do in their homes.
Mhm.
So beginning with things like green building design and construction. So we did
Oh,
a lot of promotion to architects and builders about how they can use less energy to build homes and how they can make those homes more healthy with indoor air quality and also by using natural materials and reducing waste, and how people can know and understand that enough to buy it for their home. So also then doing energy efficient upgrades in their homes. And then I transitioned into solar power. So getting solar energy systems, and also into the area of finance. So being able to finance, get loans essentially for solar energy equipment. So it had very much to do with individual decisions, how people want to make investments in their homes and in their lives, and also working with professionals in terms of what they can realistically do, with market demand and with sort of the state of the market, what's available to them. And all of this came from a deep desire for sustainability, for the natural environment and for people and for communities. And so those deep desires for sustainability and the greater good, I haven't set any of those aside. Like I still have, all of that is core to me. It's just that now I'm refocused on things like human health and making good decisions about your health versus making those decisions about how you use energy.
I love that, and I love your answer. That's why I wanted to dig down on that a little because it sounds like you have the same mission, but you've just niched down more in terms of where you're focusing that mission. And you kind of went from the environment to like the locale to the residential to the individual in terms of what you're dealing with. So is that who are you coaching or teaching that now? Is that how that works?
Yeah, so now I'm very much reaching out to individuals. And through a context of either directly, or maybe it's through a faith community, or maybe it's through a business, an organization, or maybe it's through a community group. Because, we function and interact within all of these groups, and that's uh, really important to our health, quite frankly. So how well we interact with others and the fact that we make attempts to interact with others, that's really important. Um, one of the big sort of conclusions that I came to early on in and through the What's Worthwhile podcast was that mind, body, and spirit are just interconnected, and that we need to and we should pursue mind, body, and spirit wellness and health all at the same time. Those are three individual elements, but they interact and impact each other all the time in very powerful ways. And so, if we want to really accomplish all the things that we want to accomplish in our lives, we really need to take care of our mind, body, and spirit. And that gives us a real foundation in order to do all the things that we want to do.
Nice. The no, I know you have the podcast, and we're certainly going to get to that since this is, hey, the Podcaster Nation. That's what we talk about. But I'm intrigued about the book too, because I mean, you have a very specific title to the book, and I love the SEO and the long form, long tail, and everything else to it. So it's well done there. Stress response. Manage your response to stress in order to reduce anxiety, avoid burnout, and find calm and steady focus. And that's very specific in terms of what you're working with people on and what the book is about. So, is this like an instructional type manual, or give examples on how to do things? Is it motivational? Is it educational? Tell us about what you put in there.
Yeah. I've been a communicator, a writer, a speaker my whole adult life. I've toyed with the idea of writing a book for a very long time, but didn't I don't I never felt like my life was interesting enough to warrant writing a book. And the idea of I'm too young for a memoir. Um, but this is a how-to book. This is instead is a very functional book, and it really digs into, like you said, one specific thing, which is our stress response. Look, stress is a part of our lives, everyday lives, and we're not going to get away from stress. We're not, and we shouldn't try to, because stress is just part of how we live. However, we're at a major disadvantage because our innate stress response, our built-in stress response, was either designed or evolved to deal primarily with physical challenges. So threats that are right up in our face, that the stress response, it increases heart rate, it increases blood pressure, it sends glucose to the muscles, it gets you ready to run or fight. And those things really don't serve us for most of our modern challenges, which are mental, emotional, virtual challenges. They're on the other side of a screen. And it's not productive to have that stress response. And so, really, the question is, how do we respond to stress differently? How can we manage and dissipate that innate stress response? And how can we develop and build and use a different kind of stress response to deal with the types of challenges which we have today?
Love that. The most of us, when we're writing our books, we have an idea of who we're sort of thinking about when we're writing the book, and in many cases, we're writing the book for somebody, to somebody, whether that's a specific person or a type of person, that type of thing. Who did you write this book for or to?
I wrote it, I think in many ways we also write it to our past self
Mm. Oh, for sure, for sure.
sometimes. So I do kind of imagine sometimes, like, if I could speak to who I was 10 or 20 years ago, who was in a situation and just doing their best and really trying hard and fighting a good fight, but not handling it great. And not even necessarily at first knowing why they're not handling it great. And so it's a book for someone who is stressed out at home or stressed out at work. They're trying their best. Things are not working, they're not clicking. And this is really a window into, one very specific reason why. people are experiencing stress that cannot be used productively and cannot be dissipated. And the book goes into a lot of strategies. It's very practical, hands-on strategies. It's organized so that at first it's like first aid. So it's the things, it's gives advice that people can do in the moment when they're experiencing this sort of thing, whether it's meditations or breathing exercises or, just taking literally a minute or two to make sure that they're grounded and connected to themselves and physically in their bodies. And the importance of taking a breath and not sending off that zinger of an email or social media post um, in immediate response to the threat that they just had, because often that's only going to escalate. That's not going to actually help your situation.
Yeah. Okay.
But then the other thing that I do in this book that I didn't see in a lot of the books that I was reading in preparation is that style. And, once you sort of get, you know, your additional important things in your lifestyle that give you the ability to deal with stress much more effectively.
Hmm. Okay. All right. Love that. Um, so the book came before the podcast, or the podcast came before the book?
The podcast definitely came before the book. I was finishing the book as I was finishing up my nutritional therapy practitioner certification.
Okay. All right. Wonderful. Let me shift over to the podcast a little bit then. The podcast itself, I mean, clearly it's a marketing arm for the entire business, for the book and so on. But you have mostly guests and then some solo episodes. Is that right?
Yes. So I do have a mix of, I have basically two formats. One is having a guest for a conversation and discussion. And, usually those run, I don't know, 45 minutes, something like that.
Mhm.
So what would be considered like a full length. But then I also sprinkle in solo episodes, which are more like 6, 8, 10 minutes, where I dig into either a thought that I've had or a reflection. Oftentimes it's something that the guest said, which really struck me. And so I'd give it some thought. It's more like it's like a spoken essay. And this was the original format of my podcast because it came from me journaling. So I've been journaling a lot for many years. And at some point I realized that the style that I had writing a long form journal entry didn't need to be changed much for me to basically just read it out loud as kind of an essay. And that's what those solo ones are. Um, Exploring kind of a single issue for 8 minutes or so, and really digging into it.
So the podcast, in terms of that's the solo episodes. On the guest episodes, when you do the interviews, what are you looking for in someone when you bring them on to be a guest? What is it? A type of information? Is it a story that you want told? What are you trying to bring to your listeners?
It is. So really, I like to speak with people who have asked themselves the question, what's worthwhile,
Hmm.
and have come up with an answer for themselves. It's a version of this, pivot point in your life. I think a lot of people, many people can relate to this idea that we've had a something in our life, a turning point where we realize something and we're set off in a new direction. And so I'm really interested in those stories. And then I'm particularly looking for, and I often speak with practitioners. Certainly, as I was spending a year in my NTP program, I was definitely speaking with and focusing on people who, could kind of help me. As I was studying, I was exploring a lot of that in the podcast. Uh, and it's just, honestly, it's an excuse for me to reach out to really interesting people and to get to know them a little bit. And uh, I would love to expand my network of like-minded people who are similarly mission driven to, make improvements and help save the world and change the world. And I look for people and stories to talk to on the podcast to do that. So it's a combination of people who have lived through these pivotal times and people who have productive um, things to say and services to offer in order to help people become more healthy and well in their mind, body, and spirit.
You're certified to be a nutritional therapy practitioner. You're a holistic health advocate. You've worked in renewable energy. You've written a book. The podcast itself, is the podcast at this point in your development the business, or is the podcast the vehicle that promotes all of the pieces of the business?
I'm not sure.
Good answer. That's very fair. Okay.
I think I go back and forth. I know that all of these elements are synergistic, and that's very much by intention. The podcast has been a vehicle. I'm sure that it'll continue to be a vehicle. It's moving me forward. Um, I wrote the book and published the book, and that's just really practical. It's hands-on. It's a product that I can offer to people. Um, I'm just beginning to offer one-on-one and group coaching through my NTP certification, and that's obviously very much the business.
Excellent.
The podcast, like, I just don't ever want to stop um, meeting new people and learning new things and talking about things and exploring ideas and putting ideas out there. Really, I'm looking for collaborators at this point. I feel like in 2026, my number one kind of priorities is to get out there to find like-minded people, um, so that I can help to tell their stories and talk to them on my podcast, and so that I can, reach a lot more people through other people's podcasts like yours. Thank you again.
Of course.
And also, I'm trying to attend as many community meetings as I can and get involved and volunteer. In addition to the health and wellness, I'm just really interested in the idea of bridge building. So building bridges between groups of people and, um, decreasing polarization. We all have such, seems like many of us have very strong opinions about things, and we have very different sources of information, and there just are no trusted single sources of authority left. This is something I talk about frequently on the podcast. So what do you do with that, right? And my response to that is, well, we have to think for ourselves. We have to look at as many perspectives as we can. We need to search for as much source material as we can find. We need to use our discernment to find what rings true, but we should always continue to talk to other people. We need to have more conversations, not less. And we especially need to speak with and work with and talk with people who don't agree with us, because they are probably the ones who can teach us the most. And so whether we're talking specifically about nutrition or whether we're talking more broadly about, what is important to do within society. Just really reaching out and connecting with more people and getting out there. So that's what my 2026 intentions are all about.
That's awesome. Sounds like a bunch of really good goals to have there for what you're working on. I wish you all the best in doing all of those things. You mentioned a lot of the grassroots stuff that you're doing. You're doing a lot of personal networking and that kind of marketing. The handshaking stuff like that, getting to know people. That's really important to do on the grassroots level and grassroots rather. And so I'm glad to hear that. Are there other ways that you have gone about trying to promote the podcast? And if so, have any of them worked well, or have any just absolutely not worked at all that maybe you want to warn people about?
Um, I don't think there is a magic formula on how to effectively promote a podcast. There's what 4 million podcasts at this point out there in the universe. The best advice that I've heard, I think, is to be consistent and to set a production schedule for yourself and to continue to use that schedule and keep going. I have it's a great thing to share with your friends and your family and talk about it. Sometimes it's really difficult and scary though to mention to people that you really care about the fact that you're doing this. And like in some ways, it feels like it might be easier to say it to perfect strangers, right? Because there's less of a an expectation there. But you got to do it. You just got to do it. You got to embrace it and tell people about it. I really think too that you got to thoroughly enjoy podcasting. You have to do it because it's important to you and because the topic is important and because you're interested and because you feel like you have something unique and different to say. And that's what it's really all about is those of us who put time into it are doing it because we feel like we have something to say and we want people to hear it and we want to hear what other people have to say. So reach out and do it and stick with it. Just keep going.
Nice. Okay, nice. Have you has social media been a part of your promotion attempt, or is that not something that you utilize a lot?
I do certainly try to use social media. I've never been terribly good at social media. Like when I hold my phone, I like use my forefinger to like tap the individual letters on the screen. That's the level I'm at. Like when I was able to get my texting device connected to the keyboard on my computer, like that was a breakthrough. So that I could type that way. So I'm not terribly good at social media, but I do. Some people really are. I feel like it also can just be a bottomless pit, though, and the social media can suck you in, and it can be frustrating if you're just creating content all the time and not seeing a response to it. I think it's really necessary. I try to use social media to be positive, and I don't know, it's a funny sort of paradox because it feels like most of the really prominent or big or viral social media stuff is usually negative and angry. But then it seems like on an individual level, the most successful levels of engagement like that you'd want to have are when people get really vulnerable and share something really important and, positive or not even positive, but real and genuine, and then real live human compassion kicks in, and that it seems like those are the posts that have the most successful engagement among like real people that I know, as opposed to influencers out there
Yeah,
that may or may
yeah.
not be manufactured. So I don't know. Like I'd love to hear more about. I'd love to hear more from people who have success with social media.
Yeah, for sure. No, I can appreciate your viewpoint on it too. I remember, starting off with the one finger method of how do I do what do I push and how does it? Yeah, I'm with you. I've been there. My kids, totally different story. Scooped
Yeah,
it up,
no, it's
zing, they were in. Like, Where'd you get the
Hmm.
instruction manual from? It just got downloaded, I guess. But
Yes.
yeah.
Hmm.
So I'm with you there. Now, on the podcast, you're over 130 episodes. So congratulations there because you've passed a couple of
Thank
milestones
you.
already. The first few are 20 episodes, 50 episodes, and then 100 episodes. And so you got through the three, sort of first milestones. That helps your podcast get promoted more through all the algorithms and stuff. So congrats on that. I mean, 130 episodes, you've been through a few things, which is really neat. At this level, I know you've got the book that's for sale, and you're talking about doing some coaching courses. Have you had a chance to monetize at this point in any other way with that many episodes?
Um, just a little bit. So
Okay.
you and I, we met through Podmatch.
Hmm.
And so there's a little bit of monetization that can come through Podmatch.
Sure.
If you don't already know, then Podmatch is like a dating service for podcasters and hosts.
Right.
It's a very effective way to put your profile out there and get connected with like-minded either guests and or hosts. And there is a little bit of monetization that comes through that. I've been, the first ads I have are ads for my own stuff.
That's a great way to start.
And
So,
that's kind of where I'm at. And yeah, monetization is still on the way.
nice. Okay. Good deal. I have to ask this question of everybody. I'm not a big fan, but if I don't ask it, I actually hear from people. I think they're holding my feet to the flame to make sure I ask these questions when they listen to the episodes. So, do you utilize AI for anything in your podcast? And if so, what do you do with it?
I do. I do use AI. And I've been training AI to understand how I think of things, what my perspective is on the world, and what my values are. Um, and I have conversations back and forth with AI. I find it very helpful to sharpen my thinking and to also give me a head start on writing my essentially my monologue, the individual episodes. So think of AI like an intern. Um, and I also, so I guess I'm getting up to the point where it's like, more than just an intern in terms of someone who, is adding real value. But I also am very careful to not ask AI what I should do. Because it's like that's what like I want to be the one who's sort of thinking about what I should do, and it's very much my values and morals and ethics that are driving this whole thing. So the AI is a powerful tool, and I do believe that it is very effective, and I'm often amazed at how at what it can come back with. But at the same time, we have to remember what makes us human and what makes us ourselves and what makes us unique. And we need to hang on and we need to always have veto power over what the AI says. Oh, you might try this, you might do that. You gotta take it or leave it.
Yeah, great answer. I appreciate that. I really do. Um, as we move forward here, let's see, time wise, yeah, it's about time for my corny question. So, let me go ahead and hit you with this. Strap on your seatbelt. It's really going to throw you for a loop. Um, when it comes to doing your podcast, what is it about doing the podcast that
Okay, I'm
you
ready.
what is it about doing the podcast that you love the most? And what is it about doing the podcast that you just absolutely can't stand, throw out the window, hate the most?
Oh, I love the most when I get the idea and the idea just writes itself in my head. And that almost always happens while I'm running. So I like to run. I like to run about 5 miles at a time. Takes a little under an hour. That's like a healthy, pleasant run for me. And there's always a space of time in the middle of that run where I'm just really thinking and just do my best thinking. And that's really exciting when an idea that sort of hits me and then it just sort of develops and just sort of writes itself inside of my head with my own thoughts. And then I have to go back and translate those. And I guess what I really hate is when um, I forget that incredible idea that I had before I was able to write it down and capture it, and then it's gone. Because later on, a couple hours later, I don't have the same juices in my head. I don't have the same capabilities that I had when I was at my peak performance when I was running. So I always got to be careful to try to write it down right away. In fact, I started audio recording some notes while I'm running, which is kind of interesting. I don't think I'll be, actually recording a podcast while I'm running. Probably the audio quality on that would be pretty poor. But it's good to capture my thoughts.
Love it. All right. Told you that question was nothing to worry about.
Yeah, good stuff. Good
So,
stuff.
let me back up for a minute because the idea of holistic health and wellness. Um, this is something that I think may have a bunch of different definitions to different people that are out there. In terms of what that really means and what that encompasses. With what you focus on and with what you try to help people with, is there a particular area of the health and wellness, um, genre that you focus in, or is it just health and wellness in general?
Yeah, that's a it's an important point and distinction. And as an NTP, a nutritional therapy practitioner, I'm really looking at the foundations of health. And so we really try to just promote the simple basics. And it's surprising how difficult it is in modern life to really get a hold consistently of the basic foundation. So I'm talking about a few things. I'm talking about eating real food. So nutrient dense whole foods, foods that, started on four legs or in the ocean or growing in the dirt and not manufactured in a factory.
Hmm.
We're also talking about having effective digestion, being mindful about how and when and the ways in which you're eating, so that the food agrees with you. That's an old expression. Oh, that doesn't agree with me. Well, that's actually somewhat valid, right? And then also uh, managing your stress response. We've talked a lot about that, how you deal with stress, because it's a stress, even though it's emotional, it's a chemical, mechanical reaction that's going on within your body. And things like digestion, they get put on the back burner when you're stressed out. And so you're not going to have effective digestion when you are stressed out. Another how important it is to uh, eat the right things at the right times, even in the right order, in order to get nice, smooth blood sugar. And it's not just people who are struggling with diabetes, it's everyone. Because when we have that sugary snack or we drink that soda, we get this burst of blood sugar, but then it gets knocked down by insulin, and then we have a blood sugar crash. Or if our bodies are just doing that all the time, our bodies become resistant to insulin. It doesn't even respond to it anymore. So then we have a lot of difficulties. And those old Snickers commercials about being hangry when you haven't eaten, there's a lot of truth to that too. Probably not a candy bar that should be the response to it, but the concept is true. And then getting up and moving, basic movement, getting regular exercise. And you can get exercise in all kinds of different ways, but we might spend the entire day sitting in our chair. And the most exercise we might get is from, the car in the driveway or the parking lot to the house. And we probably park as close as we can. So that's probably not much exercise. So getting up and moving and getting out, especially if you can get outdoors and get fresh air and sunlight, makes a huge difference. And finally, sleep. Sleep is non-negotiable. The Guinness Book of World Records no longer records the how long someone can go without sleep because it's deadly.
Hmm.
So getting good, high quality, enough sleep on a regular basis, there's ways to do that effectively, and there's ways that we're just messing ourselves up by having unrealistic expectations of how we can sleep and how we can still function without sleeping. So as an NTP, I look at all of those things and we look at them in combination because they all work together. And there's lots and lots and lots of other ways to do health and wellness, and I'm pretty interested in many of those things, but those are the areas that I focus on myself.
That's great. I'm one who's always been sort of that sleep deprived guy. That's always been
Yeah,
sort of my thing. But let me ask you this: if I can drill down on this, since hey, I've got a health and wellness guy on the program, I figure let's take advantage. I'm going to ask him a question.
please.
All right. I hear all the time that you have to sleep for 8 hours and get good sleep, and that's great. I mean, that's kind of like saying, well, just go make more money. Like how, right? Um, is 8 hours really the thing still? How do you gauge that? And then what qualifies as good sleep in your opinion? Just curious for my own sake.
Yeah. Well, so we need different amounts of sleep in the different stages of our lives. So, very young people, infants, babies, children, they need far more sleep than that. But as adults, and when we're in kind of, adulthood, 7 or 8 hours is generally considered the ideal for that. Many people are like, oh no, I can function on 4 and 5 hours of sleep. And then, especially as we get older, as we become senior citizens, uh, many people, ages 60, 70 plus, have a lot of difficulty in getting more than 4 or 5 hours of sleep. Often it's waking up really early, right? So getting to bed kind of late and then waking up very early.
Mhm.
That doesn't mean that they don't need that sleep. It also doesn't mean that they wouldn't benefit from having more sleep. What it means is that they generally, as a group, have difficulty getting that good sleep. So, what is good sleep? Uh, we go through different patterns, different stages of sleep, from light sleep to heavier sleep, to REM sleep when you're dreaming. The deeper stages of sleep is actually when our brain goes on self-cleaning mode. You know how your oven has a self-cleaning mode?
Yeah.
Your brain actually has a self-cleaning mode, and the volume of your brain shrinks to like 60%, and it has like a liquid flush cycle that goes through your brain in a deep stage of sleep, and actually literally washes the toxins out of your gray matter. Now, that was not a scientific description, but that does actually happen, and it's crucial and it's important, and we need for that to happen. Uh, how do you get good sleep? The first thing to realize and understand is that we don't turn on a dime in terms of wakefulness. The best thing that we can do is ease into sleep. So, the last couple of hours of our day, we should be starting to relax. We should be turning down the lights in our house. We should stop eating and stop drinking alcohol and stop looking at the blue lights on our screens because all of those things are going to impact how well we sleep. If you were surprised when I said alcohol, the reason is that sure, alcohol will knock you out, but it tends to prevent you from getting into the deeper stages of sleep as effectively through the middle of the night into the morning.
Hmm.
Our
Interesting.
bodies uh, have a daily balance of cortisol, which sort of makes us up and aware, versus melatonin, which makes us more tired and relaxed. And so we want to have that cortisol peak kind of mid to early morning, and we want that melatonin to begin to peak later in the day. And so our activities um, either help that or hinder it. So things like caffeine tend to spike the cortisol. Big stress spikes the cortisol. Um, and we want that melatonin
There we go.
to be produced and released at the right time in the early evening. The other thing that we are really connected to in terms of our sleep is the sun and the actual different frequencies of light that come from natural sunlight. So we want to periodically get natural sunlight throughout the day. We want to get that morning sun because it wakes us up, and we want to get that evening sun because it helps to calm us down. And you'll notice and remember the golden hour at the end of the day when that light is much more yellow to orange to red.
Hmm.
That's a wavelength, a frequency that signals to our body that it's time to calm down and get ready for bed. And that gets actually majorly disrupted if we have these screens in our faces that have white and blue light. So, if you're running and um, active and you eat late and you're still drinking alcohol and you're looking at your phone and then you throw it aside and you jump into bed, you're that's difficult. That is not setting yourself up for a success in terms of getting a good night's sleep.
I appreciate you going down that rabbit hole with me. That's so if I am in a studio all day and get no sunlight, and then I eat and drink and stare at a computer screen as long as I possibly can until my body gives out and my head falls forward and I'm asleep, that's a bad thing. That's what you tell
Kinda. Yeah,
me.
kinda.
Okay.
Did
All
that one
right.
hit home for you?
I'm just not going to let my wife listen to this episode. I'll tell you that right now. So
Oh
I
man,
appreciate it.
she knew she was right all along.
Yeah, sure. You're right
So
about
did
that.
you.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to hear it from an impartial observer. Now I know she's right, and there's just nothing I can do about it. So it's all right, man. I appreciate this. One last question about the coaching that you're putting together right now. You mentioned some group activities and things like that. Are you going to do group and one-on-one, or just group coaching? What's your vision for the coaching program that you're moving towards?
Yes, very much a combination. So, in terms of individual one-on-one coaching, having there's a process that we go through. It starts with really looking closely at our behaviors. So, what we're eating, the exercise that we're getting, when we're going to bed, how it's going, how we feel after we eat. So that starts with filling out a food and mood journal, and that might be, 3 to 5 days.
Hmm.
And then I'll work with a client to really understand and interpret what we observed and learned. People learn a ton about themselves when they actually take the time to pay attention and write it down and measure it. From there, we will look at individual suggestions, like really hands-on, practical things that they can do. And we'll try that out for a time period, um, and make changes and arrangements as we go. Usually, individual coaching time period like that is, maybe a 3 month period. In terms of group coaching, I'd like to get a group of guys together to share their experiences, talk about how it's going, talk about what they're learning about themselves, what challenges they're experiencing, and really, swap stories. I think this is something that, especially us guys, we don't do often enough. A lot of times first of all, everything's fine. It's fine. It's great. It's fine.
Right.
We guys, we sort of live in the state of denial as long as possible. And then we don't want to talk about our feelings or, that kind of stuff. Um, but what I've always found is that when I get into a group of guys who are actually talking to each other and actually being real, it's just really profound and barriers get knocked down. And what we discover is that we have far more in common than we realize. We're dealing with basically the same things, just different, variations on basically the same thing. So, uh, it's a great context in order to tackle our individual health. So, yeah, doing that too.
Nice. Nice. Well, I wish you all the luck in the world with that. And it's pretty clear how you're using the podcast to kind of help promote all of it. So, my best luck with the podcast as well. I have one more question for you as we wrap things up. But before we get there, I want to make sure we get out all of your contact info, website, how to find the book, everything else. How can people reach Ramsey Zimmerman?
Best way is through my website, what'sworthwhile.net. And I definitely have from there links to the book and links to my services and links to my various social media through things like Instagram and Facebook and X and LinkedIn. And I just love to hear from you. So please do reach out, if you're kind of going through this yourself, or if you feel like you are shouting into the wilderness. I know I've felt that way many times. And also, if this resonates with you and you're doing similar work, please contact me. I'd love to collaborate. I'd love to help you tell your story online through What's Worthwhile and also see what we can do together.
Awesome. All right, folks. So visit the website and, of course, check out the podcast and look up the book. Ramsey, last question here is, like I said, 130 episodes, so you're out there killing it. What's your best piece of advice for podcasters who are out there listening to this right now, who are just not quite where you are yet?
Continue, keep at it. And if you feel like you're in a rut or if you feel like something is not working, also don't be afraid to kind of pivot a little bit and look around in a different way and continue to experiment, continue to try different things, uh, and just try to always keep having fun with it. And if you're not having fun with it, if you're discouraged, then try to figure out why and try to see if there's something a little different that you can do. Change it up a little bit. Get back to doing what is fun and exciting because that's what you need. You need that energy, and people read your energy. People can hear your energy just as much as the words that you say.
Nice. Great advice. Love that. Continue in one word. Just boom. Mic drop. There it is.
Yep, right on.
I love it. All right. Holistic health and wellness, professional, trained NTP, nutritional therapy practitioner, author of Stress Response, Manage Your Response to Stress in Order to Reduce Anxiety, Avoid Burnout, and Find Calm and Steady Focus, and the host of the hit podcast, What's Worthwhile, Healthy Living, Motivation, and Discussion, Ramsey Zimmerman. Ramsey, thank you for being on today, for spreading all this great information, and for putting yourself out there like that to help other people. It's great what you're doing, and I love it. Thanks for being on.
Thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. Folks, that's been another great episode of the Podcaster Nation. And the reason we have such powerful podcasters come on here with these great messages is because this is the podcast that's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. We proved yet again today, folks, that this is the place where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So keep sailing.